This is Willpower.
I'm here with Mollie Eastman and Danny Hamilton, and I'm Kristen Weitzel, if you don't know. And we're going to talk about all things kind of sleep and health and glucose, and I'm really looking forward to diving into the conversation. And I think it behooves us to do like a little snippet of where we live and what we are playing in the realm of health. So, Danny, why don't you just start us off and give a little snippet? I do want to gush a little. I want to say that I've gotten a chance to get to know these women really, really so beautifully over the last few years. And I continue to see them shining on stages, which is amazing because the more we all get to speak and get around in the world, the more our voices get heard, but also the more people hopefully hear these educational tools and adjust their health state. And that's really exciting. And I just want to, both these women have been on my podcast in a solo episode. And so if you want to hear a whole story about Mollie's origin story or Danny's origin story and all of those pieces, then you can always listen to that. And they have many, many times been on a guest on other episodes and have their own podcasts. So it's ripe with information out in the world. So I'm so stoked that we're together. And I could gush for an hour about both of you, but I just thought maybe Danny would start and give a little snippet of past life and where you live in your body and your health now.
Oh, where I live in my body. Well, I currently physically live in Austin, Texas. I was a Florida girl for 15 years prior, but just moved here over the summer. And I am a blood sugar specialist. And if that sounds really boring to you, I would have agreed with that statement about 10 years ago because I didn't realize, but blood sugar was completely disrupting my health in so many ways. And I didn't associate with it because I was like, I don't have diabetes. No one in my family has diabetes, so I don't need to pay attention to my blood sugar. But what I did have was polycystic ovarian syndrome, PCOS. I had a ravenous sweet tooth, which I thought was just, part of my personality. I used to say, I'm the hangry friend. I don't have one sweet tooth. All my teeth are sweet. I was a, quote, breakfast person, and that's why I needed to eat breakfast immediately upon waking because I'd wake up shaky. Like I didn't know that I was hypoglycemic, and I didn't know that all these blood sugar issues were driving me to be snacking all the time and eating before I went out to eat and impacting my hormones in a big way. So I didn't get my period for 6 months. And when I did get it, my PMS was like off the chain. And so it was really affecting me in a big way. Acne, weight gain, inability to lose weight, brain fog. I mean, just you name it. And I didn't realize that our blood sugar impacts every single aspect of our health. And so once I was able to dial in my blood sugar, stabilize it, all the things in my health just got so much better. And so that's why I have a platform where I teach people how to optimize their blood sugar. You don't have to have diabetes to take part in this. Over 93% of the population is said to be metabolically unhealthy. So this is something that affects almost every single person. And our blood sugar is something that really, really drastically impacts our sleep. And so it's really important to nail the day with the blood sugar so we can have a good night's sleep.
Yeah, so awesome.
Yeah.
I love it. I mean,
Take it away.
Take it away. I got to say a couple things. One, well, try to match your amazing radio voice, but I can't quite get there. So sorry if it's more, not as lulling us into a sleep state. But I have to say, I feel like this is a perfect setting and duo and trio but the duo of the conversations, because we're often discussing the fact that blood sugar and sleep are this beautiful bidirectional relationship. And then the amazing work you do to get into this parasympathetic state, to facilitate all of this, they all go so hand in hand. But yes, so a little bit about me. I'm Mollie Eastman. I'm founder of Sleep is a Skill. And as you pointed out, I can, a much longer story of the background of how in the world I became found myself in this realm of sleep. And it was really a circuitous route. So if you want to hear that longer story, you can. But the main takeaway is essentially I am now a woman on a mission to really help people giving essentially agency around their sleep is my main mission. How to have agency, how to get into the driver's seat with your sleep. Realize that there is a driver's seat in this area of sleep. You're not just at the effect of this, and specifically through circadian rhythm entrainment. Now, this all came from a history and a genesis of my own sleep breakdown. And it really looked like some of the lowest moments in my life. There was times when I just had the darkest of thoughts, and I started to really question, can I go on if this continues? And some of the thoughts that I would have were very, very concerning. And I share that because I know that some people, and many people, when they do get into these periods of time when their sleep is not working, it can feel very disempowering. Now, whether you're at that level or just, kind of struggling, or have a speculation that you might be able to sleep better, I'm of the estimation that all of us can up-level this area of life. Similar to what you were talking about on the percentages, we know that the majority of people, so we have numbers that the average person is spending well over 90% of their days inside, and we can talk about why that's a problem, but this indoor issue means that most of us are dealing with some form of circadian dysregulation. And if that's the case, that means that your sleep is not only not functioning as well as it could, but all of these other things that get impacted by our circadian rhythms are also not functioning at an optimal level, including blood sugar, and including some of our stress responses, to know that our thoughts exist on a diurnal pattern or rhythm is also a fascinating area of, conversation. So it's just a big, big topic, and I'm excited to get into it more today.
Yeah. So I think critically, a lot of what we were speaking about this before we hit the record button, but just critically, a lot of what I think I continue to see in the health landscape is this. You mentioned the word agency. It's like, how do we have autonomy to choose? How do we have agency and feel empowered to shift these things in our lives? And maybe even just to not to suggest too much to the people who might be listening, but just to really take a moment right now, if you're like sitting in your car or in the office or wherever you're listening to this, and thinking about, are there places that you are selling yourself short or your long-term health short because you're and it's not about shame. It's about focus of the energy, right? The energy behind the action. It's like, how do we create a space and a plan? Somebody who's excellent at systems, Mollie Eastman. But how do we create a system and a plan for ourselves when we're navigating these things, whether it be light or glucose or sleep or breathing? For me, that's like, is it stress? Because the thing that I learned from CGM specifically, I was like, oh, well, cassava's out and a few like food items. But the thing for me with glucose was when I'm like running behind or having to get, overbooking myself or running down the stairs, carrying my wet laundry, doing like that, those spikes were the biggest spikes, like as big, if not bigger than like gym spikes or sugar spikes would be from like eating that, a food that had contained sugar. Cause you always got to test, the ice cream test when you have a CGM in.
Yes.
But, so stress, right? So whether it's stress, whether it's glucose, whether it's sleep, it's like, where in the spaces in your life right now, where are you selling yourself short, not making the date and keeping it is what I want to talk about a little, and in a way that feels like a beautiful, kind, loving, mindful smack that we all, including me, so I've been on the road for so many weeks, can make just small changes and like just put the phone down, right? And some things like that, as we'll talk about, maybe the whys behind it, then perhaps it will give everyone a bit more opportunity to stand in and create some of that agency. I don't know if you are feeling this always, but when I'm working with clients one-on-one, I see that they are quite often serving everyone around them so deeply and then just underserving themselves and then maybe doing it all indoors, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so, let's start with a conversation about light. I know that you're a fan of Jack Kruse, and I think that there's so much there to chat about. But let's talk about light across the board, just light, maybe the interplay of light and how we're nourishing ourselves, light and sleep. And, let's dive into that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so a couple things. One, this conversation around light, if anyone's hearing this and feels like, tune out. I mean, what is there to talk about? It's just turn on the light, turns off the light. What's fascinating is that there's an opportunity to get really curious about the impact of light like a drug. And we know that it has measurable impacts like a drug. Phototherapy is actually a protocol that we can bring into our lives and have measurable effects. So when we think about light, what is the problem? Well, we know that estimations have it that the average person is in a light environment by day that is around 100 times too dim by day as compared to if they were outside. And on average, around 100 times too bright as compared to the brightest moonlit evenings that we would have encountered in nature, with our ancestors being much more outdoor creatures. So what does that mean and why do we care? Well, it means that under that principle, since we're all living indoors, we are in the circadian mismatch or circadian dysregulation state. And this is not only causing problems with our sleep-wake cycle, but it's causing issues with all the things that circadian regulation actually impacts. So what are some other things? Our hormonal regulation, our immunity, cancer rates, our emotionality, so our ability to be fully, our cognition, the experience of life gets impacted when these things are turned upside down. Now, the practical application of shifting this can actually take something for the average individual, especially from our lifestyles in society, the work from home revolution, all these reasons that we might find ourselves indoors in an inordinate amount. So the thing about it is that I think it takes some real conversations like we're doing because you mentioned Jack Cruz really was eye-opening for me in my journey. I got my first pair of blue blockers, Uvex, $10 in 2016. And
really good ones.
And yet totally effective. By the way, I just want to throw out there are ways that you can make a difference with your light environment on the cheap, if you will. There's things that you can do. Of course, you can make it more trendy and beautiful, and there's nuance there. But what I want to say is that it takes something, and still, I've been in this conversation for years now, and I'm still finding ways that I can up-level this, work with my clients on all the nuances, and certainly when you add life into the mix with travel and, taking on things in your life, that there's often going to be situations that you find yourself in where this can be problematic. This is why I really want to create more of this circadian revolution so that we can have more environments that understand and promote circadian aligned building biology. And then when we have that as a result, when our environment works, our health is more likely to work in a automatic way.
For real.
Yeah.
For real.
It's important.
Yeah.
And I know, I just said a lot of things, and it can beg the question of, is it really that big of a deal? Well, one thing that I'm citing quite a bit is that just last year, almost 250 circadian scientists, staking their entire reputations, referencing almost 2,700 peer-reviewed publications, are now calling for warning labels on light bulbs when used at night, not just because of the impacts on your sleep-wake, but it also ripples into things like obesity, so our waistline. It ripples into things like cancer, particularly things like breast cancer, pancreatic cancers, and other cancers, psychiatric disorders, fertility. So our mental health comes into play. So it's so far-reaching. And if we just begin with this light-dark piece, it can be such a great anchoring system. So when I work with people on optimizing their sleep, there's two anchor places that I have people begin. Your light-dark environment. Why? Because it's the top most impactful zeitgeber or time giver for your circadian health. Secondly, because sleep loves consistency, but also anything that functions on these rhythms loves consistency, including glucose. And so if we can begin with a consistent wake-up time 7 days a week, where we marry our consistent wake-up time with that bright light exposure, it can give you the best shot at now kind of winning the day on the rest of the things you're going to bring in.
Yeah. Thoughts?
Yeah. So just to kind of sum up what Mollie said and then add on, light is a huge time giver. It tells our body what to do when. It's a very strong stimulus for our body to create hormones or to turn on and off genes. And so I think that the essence is that we want to put our bodies in a light environment that most clearly mimics that of nature, because nature is never wrong. And nature, that light of the sun and then the absence of the sun, so the darkness, is how we as humans evolved. And every single creature on this planet that has a 24-hour day, we don't have like a 2,000 hour day like Venus
Yes.
or whatever. We don't have a 400 and
Well, I could use it to get some
Yeah.
good stuff.
Yeah, right.
we don't
Exactly.
have like a 450 day year. Like our planet is very distinct. We have to, like, and our circadian rhythms are this 24-hour cycle because we are on planet Earth. We have seasons on this Earth because our Earth is at a tilt. So it's a really cool concept, but it allows life to exist, and we evolved with those signals. So the further we get from nature, that 90% indoor, the sicker we get. Think about animals in the zoo, right? So we want to most closely mimic their exact environment. Same thing with humans. Our environment isn't this. Our environment is outside. So there's so much we can do with modern technology to mimic that. So I think that one of the first, another important thing to realize is that blue rays of light, so the visible spectrum and blues specifically, they're very high in sunlight during the day. So daylight has a lot of blue light in it, even though we can't really see that. We think it's like yellow or whatever, or white. And so light bulbs also, especially these LED bulbs. And Mollie will tell you that the incandescent light bulbs, they've been now deemed illegal. And so those lights, the incandescent ones, like the Edison ones, they had a lot more red hues, which are more calming. They don't raise cortisol. But these blue lights, the blue is good during the day. The sun is never wrong, like the earth is never wrong. So we want these hues in the day, as Mollie talked about, because we want this signal of this brightness. And we also, ironically, need cortisol during the day to solve problems, to think, to get things done. We need to have cortisol. If anyone has been flatlined in cortisol, they know how important it is, right? So we want those highs during the day at the right time. But then as the sun goes down, we don't want to be popping on a bright LED light bulb, because now we are literally raising our cortisol, which also raises glucose, because cortisol is a glucocorticoid hormone. The point of it is to make new glucose so we can fight or flight, so we can run away from a threat. So our nighttime environment, if it contains a lot of these white light bulbs, screens, TVs, phones, and then even before the sun comes up, a lot of people wake up before the sun. They just flip on lights without thinking about it, because why would you? You know, this is all stuff that we had to learn too.
Yeah.
And it's so we're unknowingly disrupting these rhythms. We're sending strong messages to our body to be creating cortisol at the wrong time. And it is causing us to be in a state of dis-ease. So some simple takeaways is that we want to think about mimicking what's going on in the outside. And this is going to be helpful for our sleep and also for our blood sugar, because just like Kristen said, those spikes of stress on a continuous glucose monitor, those are some of the biggest spikes that we can see, whether it's an acute sort of situation. But what I tend to find is that this chronicness, because the lights go on every single night when the sun goes down, right? This chronic low level of stress, plus all our other stressors, because there's a lot more stuff stressing us out other than the lights, that can often drive these just chronically elevated levels of blood sugar. And then if we are, there's some people where their adrenals are just tanked, their minerals are tanked, and then they are people who are having these drops in blood sugar. They can't bring their blood sugar up no matter what. And so let's just make our environment set up to help us regulate our nervous system, to help with the things that we can. To me, it feels like a no-brainer. Like, yeah, I want to set up my house, my environment, to make sure my nervous system stays calm, set the mood. So maybe I'll talk about some daytime stuff like sunrise and on, and then you can talk about
Perfect.
evening time.
Love it.
So
how to navigate, let's figure out let's talk about the practical tools and ways that we can be smarter and give ourselves that mindful smack about what are the best ways for us to manage light.
Yeah. Perfect. So when you wake up, ideally we're waking up with around sunrise. And that changes depending on where you live. So there's lots of apps. You can just Google it, ask Alexa, when does the sun rise in your area? And so you want to sort of sync waking up with the sun if that is available to you. If not, if you're like, I have to wake up at 5 a.m. every single day, and sometimes the sun isn't up, we want to block out these intense blue rays of light because we want our cortisol to start rising gradually. And that's what we would see with the sunrise, where there's a lot of red rays and then it starts to be blue and then it gets more intense. And so it's a gentle rise. If we wake up and first thing we have a bright phone in our eyes, our body's like, oh my gosh, it's 10 a.m. And so you get this like big hit of cortisol and then maybe a big blood sugar hit, right? So we want to eliminate that. So putting on some blue blocker glasses, orange lens blue blocker glasses is a great way to do that. And keeping your house dim and using some of the light bulbs that Mollie will talk about, but like an orange or a red hued light bulb, and just keeping things pretty dim in the morning as much as possible. Of course, we want you to be able to see because, you know, people's spouses are like not okay with this because they can't see. It's like, well, let's set up so we can make sure we can see. You know, that's an important thing. I'm not suggesting everybody like walk around, you know, in the dark. That's not it. So we don't need to live like the pioneersmen. But so blue blocking glasses before sunrise, if applicable. And then the first light we ideally want to get is that light from sunrise. We want to get it with the naked eyes. That's going to tell our circadian rhythm when to start producing melatonin later on that night. It's going to give us that gradual rise of cortisol. And it's also, importantly, going to trigger us to feel hungry. And so this is a really cool thing that can happen once you do this on a consistent basis, because I think blood sugar wise, we really want to be eating within an hour of sunrise to give our body some energy, some nutrients so it can run on that instead of running on cortisol. And so then throughout the day, it's important to get these light breaks to tell our body, just pop your head outside, open a window. If you can't get outside for sunrise, just open the window, no glasses, no contacts, just the naked eyes, and do your best to just have these little light breaks. Don't take a cigarette break, take a light break so you can keep telling your body, this is what time it is, this is what time it is, this is what time it is. You can use some yellow daytime lenses to sort of get rid of some of those harsh hues from, let's say, the artificial type lights, and some of the screens. You can use some iris software on your computer to take down some of those intense tones, but we want that brightness by day. So as much as I can personally, I will work outside. I'll open a window, so I'm sitting in front of the window, getting the natural rays of light, even if it's cloudy, even if it's raining, even if it's snowing. It's always the right stimulus from outside. So that's how we would want to set up the daytime, to be this gradual exposure during the morning, brightness during the day, and then as the sun goes down, take it away.
As the sun goes down.
I want to interject one thing, which I think is super beautiful to focus on, which is that many, many people, I continue to see this. Yes, a lot of females, because I do work with females, but generally speaking are like, well, I didn't really, like, my mom's here with me right now. And she's like, well, I'm not really like hungry till like 11 or 12 anyway, every day. And it's just, there is such an important component for a number of reasons, but also for the sleep-wake cycle, for glucose management, as we're aging, to actually get some food in us in the morning instead of this thing where it's like run it, gun it, black cup of coffee, going till noon. There's just so many negative effects, I think, that come with that. That's not to say that people shouldn't ever fast or whatever protocols you're doing out there, but there's a really distinct time.
Fast in the evening.
To be eating.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Just
eating in the
swap it.
morning is not widespread. We need to be eating in the morning more often to really... the other thing for me, I always try to build it back, like, what's your nervous system saying and how safe do you feel? And if your body has a little food in it, has a little energy, then it's like, okay, I may not need to spike cortisol as much. I'm going to be able to feel safe enough that I can continue to function for the day. There's no starvation issues. I'm regulating so much of what's going on in the body so that, like, I can feel safe from eating food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
100%. I mean, we want to think about a couple of things, because your mom's not wrong that she's not hungry in the morning. And
that's like patterned.
That's
like,
pattern.
Yeah.
So that's what we want to, because so many people say that. I was one of those people too. I was very proud of myself. I would say, well, I don't eat until I'd push it 12, 1, whatever. And I'd be applauding. And the truth is, we can train. This is all under the umbrella of circadian rhythm entrainment. We can entrain these signals so the metabolic processes can be trained. And if we've set up an environment where we have consistent cues, the body says, this is, I guess, what we do here. So we get hungry at around 11 a.m. in that case, and we prepare, and the body loves to have the knowing of what's coming, because it can put in the preparatory agents that it needs to have to deal with digestion, which is a taxing process. And so the more you can let your body know what time do we do things here, it's important. And it can take some time to kind of adjust that process. But what a lot of people I see are dealing with, because the people that I work with are all wearing Oura rings at least, or some sort of, sleep tracker. We all got the Oura. It's such an ad for Oura. And, and I also see Whoop and BioStrap and different ways that people are tracking. But with that, one of the things we see is social jet lag, and there's such a thing as metabolic jet lag. And so how do we see that? When people are sleeping in on the weekends, and often what happens then? Well, you wake up and you're not hungry at the same time. So now you're pushing it to like a late brunch, and we don't think much of it. But anytime we're giving that cue to the body of eating, it's telling it something about what time it is. In the same method of what you're sharing too, of the sampling of our environment through the light piece, the sampling of our environment through our activities like meal timing, which is just another Zeitgeber time giver to tell the body what to be doing when, then that is a really important factor. So you can start to move it back. Often you can kind of comfortably move it back by about 45 minutes to an hour each time, that you're starting to shift that. And I see that also very importantly for...
So getting earlier.
So you're getting earlier and earlier, because a lot of people say, I'm not even hungry. This doesn't work for me. But I assure you, you can start to move that. The same way we can jump time zones. I'm going to be traveling to Singapore in a couple months. And so I know that thankfully, thanks to entrainment, I will be able to entrain to that routine and schedule shortly. We can do that too. So we can start to move things to front load it more in alignment with the circadian aligned piece. So what would that look like from a way of thinking about it? It's known as circadian rhythm intermittent fasting, but I think it's kind of a charged title, and it can feel like anytime you hear fasting, that can feel more dramatic, but it's really not that dramatic. It's actually a very soft and gentle and natural way of thinking. And all it is just that you're eating largely when the sun is out and not so much when the sun has set. Now, I know there's, the realistic piece in society and many dinners starting at 7 p.m., 8 p.m., all the things. And it's actually one of the harder things that I see for people in practical application to bring into their lives. But once they start doing it, one of the things that I also see is that they love the experience, they love the feeling, and that they can actually point to the changes on their trackers. So some of the changes that I see when people move back their meal timing is a drop in heart rate, often an improvement in HRV, heart rate variability. Many times we'll see improvements in deep sleep. Now, this is a more loaded topic, but less sleep fragmentation for many people. And certainly, Danny can talk to that topic around if you're waking up at 3, 4 in the morning, how very often that can be aligned with the what you're doing by day as far as your food piece. But the timing is everything. So looking at that is key.
Can I jump in?
Yes, please.
So if we're sticking with the meal daytime stuff, the idea that eating earlier in the day is going to be better for our sleep for most people. And it's also really important because our insulin is also circadian driven. Yes. So we have better insulin sensitivity, and which allows for better blood sugar regulation during the daytime, and it actually reduces as the day goes on. So if your circadian rhythm is very aligned and entrained, you will probably notice, if you wear a continuous glucose monitor, a meal that you eat for breakfast and you get, let's say, almost no spike from it. If you have that same meal for lunch, you might get a little bit more of a spike. As a snack in the afternoon, a little bit more of a spike, and then for dinner, a much bigger spike. And so what I say is that when the sun goes down, insulin clocks out. It's almost like our body is just not set up to digest and metabolize when the sun goes down. And that makes sense because our ancestors weren't really, they were probably eating during the day and then resting, relaxing by the fire in the evening time and going to sleep.
Because how could you? It'd be total darkness. You can't go hunting. There's no pantry. There's
no back at camp.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, totally.
So the idea that when we eat is so important, and it is this time giver, just like light. So during the day, eating if we eat within an hour of sunrise, that sets us up to be able to eat much further out from bed. And ideally, and I know the science is not fully settled on this, but, at least 3 to 4 hours before bed, I think we like to say. And I usually find I have my best sleep if I do dinner 3 or 4 in the afternoon. So if I'm doing like a fasting type, time restricted eating, I find that my HRV goes up, just like you said, my heart rate drops. And it's, I think, because my body's not focusing on digesting. And this is really important because when we sleep, we're doing all these detoxification processes that I'm sure Mollie could speak to much more. And we're not supposed to be digesting. We're supposed to be detoxing. We're supposed to be restoring. So there's going to be people out there saying, well, Danny, I need to have a snack before bed because I wake up. And so if this is you, there's just a couple of tips I might give. Maybe try some exogenous ketones. See if that might help instead. So you can just have these ketones as a backup fuel source, because in the middle of the night, after we've sort of exhausted our fuel, maybe we don't have, if our insulin levels are elevated, we will not really have access to any stored body fuels anymore. So we lose the ability to access stored sugar in the liver, which is called glycogen. Or if we run out of the glycogen, the body will have to tap into fat burning. It uses a lot of fat burning in overnight when we're fasting. And the high insulin levels tell our body, store fat. So you can't burn fat and store fat at the same time. So this chronic either sleep dysregulation or blood sugar issues, standard American diet, stress, our insulin levels are just so high that 93% of the population that we can't tap into fat burning in the evening, where we should be able to just use that fat. It'll stabilize our blood sugar. We could sleep through the night. So instead, what happens is that our blood sugar starts dropping. We can't access fat burning. We can't access the sugar in the liver. And so our adrenals have to come in and pump us with a boatload of hormones like epinephrine, adrenaline. So we wake up in the middle of the night with a pounding heart and we're wide awake, or we think we're having an anxiety attack. And so that's often due to this lack of metabolic flexibility. So this is why it's so important to optimize our blood sugar, be able to burn fat for fuel as our bodies are intended to be able to, so we can have this healthy metabolism blood sugar state overnight. And so if you can't, you could try the ketones. You can try maybe just some fat. So I might recommend, let's say, like MCT oil blended in some herbal tea before bed. So try to use like the least harmful substance in the evening, and at the same time be working on your metabolic health during the day. And we can definitely talk about that if you'd like, but we have to work on the root causes. And so the idea that if you feel better eating before bed, that again, we're talking about a lot of things that are like these labels I put on myself and you used to put on yourself, like, I'll sleep when I'm dead, and I'm a night owl.
Bad sleeper.
So we all, I feel like we all have these beliefs about ourselves, but they're just things that we keep thinking over and over, these labels, and these things are not permanent. Like, I'm not hungry in the morning. Okay, well, that's fixable. Just same thing, like I need to eat before bed. These things are changeable, and I think that's exciting news, and I think it's news to a lot of people, right? Like I wouldn't have known that. I was like, I'm a breakfast person. I have to eat breakfast because I wake up shaking, like I would almost pass out getting fasting blood work. These things can change. Our bodies can adapt to this. It's like, would hunter-gatherers, like, would they find themselves saying like, well, I just need a little bit of chocolate after every meal? No, they wouldn't, So if the hunter-gatherer wouldn't have this belief about themselves, I believe it's something that we might be able to change. Maybe that's a gross overstatement, but maybe it's not.
I agree.
It's
yes.
changing piece too. I think it's important to say that this isn't about like, there's nothing wrong with anyone who's doing these things in many ways. It's not about fixing something that's broken in you. It's about taking education points like this or better understanding, like the science is always changing. And so how do we continue to adopt the knowledge that exists in the world from researchers and people like you that are bringing it to the forefront and then apply it to our lives? Like, this is the growth mindset piece that I think we can get really stuck in our story. We can get really stuck in our patterns, and we're meaning-making machines, right? We're going to always say, well, this is just how I am. And I think, especially as we're getting older, like I feel that, I see that, like in talking to my mom, where I think she might have been in the past, like more open to suggestion. She's kind of like, no. And yesterday I said, you keep saying this is the thing you want, and I love you, Mom, but like, do you really want it? Because you know it. We talk about it. And, she may not listen to me, but another functional medicine doctor will say something that I've said, and she'll be like, oh. But like, then how do you adhere, right? How do you adhere? And there's things that, this isn't to talk about my mom per se, but there's like, well, I'm an overeater and that's like an alcoholic. And then how do I make and it's like label after label after label. And I think the pausing in and with ourselves with a little bit of self-reflection to be like, are there labels I'm giving myself that are making me be this person that I'm not actually? Like just having some openness to the possibility that you're not a night owl, or what would it be like to do this adventure and experiment and explore changing your eating for a little while. And by the way, one day won't work. So we all got to kind of pick like the 14 or the 21. And how could you feel at the end? It's like sort of how I got into the whole landscape of nutritional, shifting my nutrition landscape, becoming nutrition specialist, biohacker. Was like, oh, I read a book called Clean. And I was like, at the end of the book, the guy said, you can take me out for lunch and tell me this whole thing is BS, but you can't do that till you've tried this for 30 days. And at the end of 30 days of doing that, I was like, oh my God, he's right. But it took that like leap and that gift of like saying, okay, well, what could I explore this as something like fun to do? Even though, and we all have experienced this, and maybe many people are listening, you're the weird one if you're going into an office. I was the weird one in the office where people are like, you're going to die from the butter in your coffee. Why are you skipping a meal? Like, whatever. We're wearing our blue blockers around town and people are like, okay, what are the red glasses for, weirdo? But there's so many, you end up being the cool kid. I think that's the message I want to say. Like, you be the weird nerd that everybody makes fun of, but if you can be resilient through it, you'll be the cool kid. You're just the early adopter. It's okay. But I want to go back just briefly a bit to talk about, as we continue to like work into the food piece, which I think is important, and maybe some of the tools are like a CGM for navigating food. But I want to talk about, I kind of learn a lot from both of you about the sleep realm and the little like trinkets and fun things and like the clock changes color 6 times and the little red, I haven't opened them yet, the red light discs that you have that are like on the thing. But it's just like, and I'm like, what is this like? And they're inexpensive. So inexpensive tools and ways that I want to talk about managing light, and then I think we can get and dive a bit more into sort of like what else we're putting into our bodies, and that can be, of course, food and stress and activities that are going to shift and play with the sleep piece. But let's talk a little bit about like light tools and ways, just like the practical things, right? Everybody is going to have whatever budget they have. So some things I'm always going to say, it's free to do breath work. Just settle yourself in. I'll send you my 7-minute track. Mostly you're going to like breathe in for some count that you make up, 3 counts, and you're going to exhale for 6 counts. And as long as you continue to push a longer nasal exhale and settle into your system and think about relaxing your body. I'm also a big Nidra fan, but basic breath work is free. It's not hard. And when you're like, it doesn't work for me. It's because you're in bed going, 3, inhale. This is not working. Kristen's wrong. I'm proving her wrong. It's like 5 minutes. I'm out. Every time I'm in my head, it's like I can get myself there. I just have to understand the process and believe. Belief is so important strongly that I can downregulate my system into sleep. I think belief is so big. But you guys have all like the fun tools and the fancy ones, and I want to talk about how we navigate light in our houses and rooms.
Post-sunset.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so I love that you said that too, because the truth is so much of this is free, is behavioral, is environmental. It might take a little bit on the front end to get it set up. But once you do that, then a lot of these things will fall into place, including your ability to properly do the breath work that Kristen gives you and feel the effects, because if our environment is guiding us into these physiological states, then it just makes all of this work. So what do we do about it? So first off, the company that I created is called Sleep is a Skill for a reason, because to your point around the labels and the mindset, if we can step into all of this as being a skill, then it's just a matter of information gathering, testing, bringing it into our own lives, and different iterations to find the ways to make it work for us from a skill-based perspective. So if we're doing that, what are the things that we can bring in that are quite affordable or easy to implement and can guide us? So one, I would say a couple. There's apps that can be really useful to bring in this information, but bring it into your life, where you are, certain considerations you have. One I really like is called Circadian. It does a great job of letting us know, first where you are on the planet, when sunrise is for you, when sunset is for you, what time you're eating. It will give you lots of kind of cues and triggers, because in the beginning, this is kind of a lot.
Look, I want it to be like, Kristen, put down the phone. I don't say those blue blockers on.
Exactly.
Put down the phone. You better. The sun is set, Kristen. Does it do that? Does
it kind of does, because, and then there will be like, and it can feel aggressively early for the average person, where suddenly, especially in the middle of the winter in New York City or something, it's like, oh, okay, the sun is setting at 4:45 or whatever the heck it is. And it's like, so we're going to start wrapping up our meal timing if we're doing it truly circadian aligned. Now, I want to give a call out to your point around what we've been discussing of the current science. And this goes into a bigger topic where you might hear conflicting things. So some of the most established research will say things like have your last bite of food more around the realm of 3 to 2 hours before bed. That has the most dearth of research. And yet, so I think absolutely bare minimum. If you want to begin there, if you're not doing that, totally start there. But then if we're leaning into the circadian aligned lifestyle, we see potential benefits, a lot of anecdotal and wearable data that seems to point to benefits from much further before that, and certainly more aligning with these rhythms of nature. So when the sun is setting, then could there be counter cues that we're giving to our body if we're turning on the digestive process, the pancreas, and then at odds with our ability to properly create melatonin in the evenings, and a whole slew of effects. So what does this look like in practicality? Well, one, you can get that circadian app, and that can help guide you and yell at you and say, hey, the sun is setting. Or you might want to kind of wrap up your eating in the near future or what have you. Two, you can make sure you're getting enough sunlight. Things like D-minder can help us. It's a whole other conversation, because if your vitamin D status is low, which most people's vitamin D levels are, that's going to be a big problem for you getting proper sleep. Why? Because that's part of that precursor to being able to create serotonin, and serotonin is a precursor to melatonin. And so this kind of beautiful concoction is, it's not able to function in the same way that we'd like to support if your vitamin D is not functioning well. And it is a hormone. So this is a big, big deal. And it impacts way more than just that sequence. It's impacting as well as the quality of your sleep, your ability to properly paralyze throughout your sleep in the ways that we want to be able to recover and have that regeneration during our sleep. So how do you get proper vitamin D? Well, that involves getting outside more frequently. It does adjust and change throughout the course of the year and where you are on the globe, and if it's cloudy or not cloudy outside. So D-minder can help you do that. It's an app that will kind of geotag you where you are and guide you on the times to get outside. Additionally, for the food piece, there's other apps that can help. On Time is out of Dr. Sachin Panda's lab. And so it can just kind of help guide you in bringing this conversation of what time do I eat things when. Zero app will also do that. It's out of Peter Attia and Thomas DeLauer and a few others. And so that has circadian rhythm intermittent fasting, and you can just set the little timer and kind of gamify it and say, oh, shoot, I'm starting to fall into the nighttime eating too much this week. What can I do to kind of scoot things back? Do I need to plan a little bit more, et cetera, et cetera? Because a lot of this becomes almost a conversation of managing our time so that we can get all these things done, like the Amish or something during the daylight hours when we have this kind of, clock ticking of the sun setting. And how can we get a lot of these things done on the front end, and then be able to use our evenings to more down regulate, to calm the nervous system, to have relaxation, give ourselves permission to be off. And what would that look like for the average person?
If you show up at Mollie's house at night, it's like, where are you? Are you in here somewhere? Hello?
No, not at all. That's why I talk about all the lights after sunset.
Yeah. So the thing is, Kristen came over and she was alarmed, I think, a little bit by...
I loved it. It's just that like no one welcomes you like that normally.
I know. She came out and everything was red and candles. And
I was like, oh my God, she's into me.
I know. I had us cuddling up on the couch.
No, it was.
I always wonder what my neighbors think, that like they see my house and all the windows are just red.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, is it a brothel?
Is it a brothel?
Who's very concerned about their circadian rhythm.
And that's the kind of cool thing about Austin, is that you will see, like, walk around downtown and you look at some of these high rises or what have you, and you'll see these red glowing spots because more and more people are beginning to be on this conversation. So bare minimum in our evenings, if we have said and established that there should be warning labels on light bulbs when used at night, and these are just any old light bulbs. These are not fancy anything. These are like, the 60-watt LED, everyone's got them light bulbs. They're a huge, huge problem, unfortunately. And I know it would, people want to be able to, oh, well, can I just turn it down? Can I just, this, that, and the other? Unfortunately, for real optimal results, what we really need to have is ideally more of kind of fire-hued colors. So reds, the oranges, and what would those light bulbs look like? Now, if you won't do that, then another one could be Himalayan salt lamps, and you can kind of make them nice and mood vibes. You can put them on the ground so they can mimic more of the fire element, because angle, intensity, color, there's a lot of components of light that impact our physiology. So the takeaway is, in the evenings, can you establish your nighttime lights? And what would those look like? So they shouldn't be the type of lights that you're still using by day. So they should be their own separate. Now, there is the option of the automatic ones like Philips Hues and different things. Just know that that does introduce another set of EMFs into your space, because it kind of has a hub and it's communicating to all the other lights. Now, I will say for some people, they're just not willing to be in this conversation. And that could still, you could argue that the cost benefit analysis would still be beneficial if it's just going to automatically bring about that circadian aligned lighting.
And Philips Hue bulbs are like, they're quite, just to be frank, they're lovely. I had them in my old condo in LA. They're expensive. And I finally was like, I need to find a less expensive way to sort of navigate this. It just made more sense. And also the way that apartments are set up. Sometimes you're like, this bulb doesn't come out of this thing. Do I have to gel it like I'm in a movie, on a movie set? Or
totally.
The van was like red. I bought, they were like $11, and it was party strip lights. And I was like, okay, I'm going to put
you can do this so affordably.
And it super worked.
Yeah.
So I like when the sun goes down, I don't like to switch to red right away.
Yeah.
And I think that this is a big game changer for a lot of people whose family's like against it.
Yeah.
Because in the winter, it's like 5:30, it's red and dark. Like, honestly, that's not really what would be happening. We'd be looking at firelight, which is a little brighter and it's more orange.
Well, fire was the first biohack.
Exactly.
Fire was the first way to extend our days artificially. So it's still an artificial introduction. Yeah.
Right. And so I like that idea of mimicking the fire, the first biohack. And so I have an orange light bulb, $7 on Amazon, people.
Yeah, exactly.
Like $7. So an orange light bulb. And then I have another lamp in my living room. So that one lives in one lamp. And then I have another lamp in my living room that has two light bulbs. One of them is white for daytime and the other one is red. So think about getting creative with the space you have, or can I introduce another lamp, get one that has two light bulbs. In my bedroom, I have two lamps on the night tables. One of them has a white light bulb for day, and one of them has a red light bulb for night. So just thinking about how to make this happen in your space. The bedroom only has the red light bulb because I'm really only up there about an hour before bed. But I'm down in the living room doing things like in my kitchen a little bit. So that's where the orange light bulb is. So we can see our space and we can navigate a little bit and not bump into things, and also not literally fall asleep at like 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
Because that'll happen, because the absence of that blue light will trigger your body to make melatonin so you fall asleep really well. So I do the orange, you light the candles, all the things, and then I go red more like an hour before bed. So
and has the darkest bedroom in Austin.
Yes.
Want to talk about the darkest?
Yes.
No, so my absolute favorite sleep tech is my U blockout shades. They 100% block the light. So you pull them down, super easy to pull down. And they also have, I believe, like a remote one. I didn't get that one, but you just pull them down, like you could pull it with a pinky finger. So it's nice and easy. And it blocks out 100% of the light. So not coming through the cracks or anything. So even daytime, you can get this full blockout effect. I personally get my neighborhood is dark enough that I have another space where light can come in, but it doesn't come in at night. So I cannot see my hand in front of me.
Yes.
My HRV went up once I got these blinds because I'm not like the dark nights, like concept you were just talking about. So my HRV went up at night when I use this, and then I still get the signal for me of the sun waking me up. And so when it gets a little bit light, that's how I know it's time to wake up. I open my blinds, good to go. So that's my personal favorite.
Yeah, it's cool.
It's so
the
important.
hotels of the world need to
Oh,
Yes.
yes.
It's so
That's the
frustrating.
on
the
the road.
electric tape. I love traveling
yes.
with her.
I know. We're the best roommates. It's like
between both of us.
amazing.
It's like all the things. for
Here's the
sleep.
secret. Everybody wants to room with like one or both of you so they could get sleep tools. And then you guys are always rooming together. And I'm like, okay. Now, I love
spread
Natalie
the
Ninham.
love.
Natalie
Or-
Ninham and I love to room together. She's
Yeah.
amazing. She's always got the good like pills and katsu bands and all the things.
Yeah.
Or most of the biohackers, but like
Yeah.
we all have roommate envy because you guys are always together and we're like,
People,
they're going to go to bed at noon. They're going to have every blackout tape, lights, smoke, and mirrors. It's like they're shooting a porn in there. It's nighttime.
We go to Whole
sleepy.
Foods at like 3 p.m.
Yeah.
We're done eating. Yeah.
everyone buys things after they room
Yes.
with us. Every single
And
person.
we freak out
they're
when they
like,
turn on a normal light.
Oh,
we're like,
yeah. Our friend turned on a light. Our friend turned on like a white light, and both of us screamed at the time. We're like, "Ah." and she was like, "What's happening?" I'm like, "The light."
I've trained my husband Blake to, so whenever we'll come in, toxic light.
That's what you said. Or-
Oh my God.
Yeah, so then he'll mimic me, and then he'll call me Darth Vader. It's like a whole thing. But even eventually, you get people to come along because at first they think you're weirdo, but eventually they love the experience, and then they too will do the whole toxic
Like your
light.
in-laws.
Yes, exactly.
Share that story.
So here's one of the things I'm starting to discover is I'm trying to find different ways to talk about this that will impact people wherever they might be at.
Where they're not
So-
like, who is that creep?
Yeah,
girl with all those
exactly.
devices in her purse.
Because if I start coming at it from like, oh, well, you know, your glucose is going to raise by this amount or whatever, if I start doing my thing, often it doesn't seem to meet people at where they might be at. So I've tried different things because we know that light, dark, it has that drug-like effect and it hits on just about every component of our experience of life. So what's important to this person? I got to find that out and then say how that lighting choice is affecting those results. So for my in-laws, they had come over. So it was my husband's wife. Oh my God, what am I saying? It's the light. It's killing me. Okay, sorry. I need my blue blockers. So it's my husband's mom and sister come over, right? And so I start sharing about how this is one of the easiest ways to get fat. Literally, to say it, put it bluntly, is to douse yourself in blue light in the evenings repeatedly. Not to mention the fact that my husband's mom had gotten breast cancer along the way. We have very clear research that points to circadian disruption and particularly breast cancer, among other breast cancers. So you can start to rattle off things that will affect just about every person's what's important to them. So we just got to figure out what those things are. But it's a big, big deal. And so we laugh about it and we say all these different things about how you can set your home up and how it looks really funny and weird. But it can make such a difference. And I promise you, if you start existing like this for a while, I had a sleep anthropologist that came on the podcast and he offered for people to take what he calls the candlelight challenge. And he does this every single year with his students. And so what he'll say is take the candlelight challenge. Most people will not do it. The candlelight challenge is after sunset, you shift over to candlelight like we likely would have done in the past. That's your only source of lighting. Most people won't do it. The people that do, they come back within a few weeks and they say, I can't believe it. I'm getting tired so much earlier. It's wild. What's really fascinating to me is when we think of certain things.
Which is a good thing. I think we need to say
a
that's
good
also a
thing.
good thing. It's okay to be sleepy at 9:30. It doesn't mean you're a grandma. It doesn't mean that things aren't working. It's like, it means you can get up earlier, that your body's going to thrive. You're going to get that. Like for me, it's like if I don't get a good night's sleep and I don't get up early, I don't get a meditation. And that sets my whole day for probably not being as fabulous as it could be.
Totally.
So that morning piece is so related to that nighttime piece.
I'm going to say something kind of controversial, and it's still very much at odds, but I want people to start to question chronotypes. So chronotypes, when people say, and most people maybe don't say chronotypes, they say, oh, I'm an early bird. They say I'm a night owl. They say whatever they say. And yet we are starting to have research that is starting to question how tightly wound or knit or in static is that state of being a night owl or what have you. And it's starting to actually unravel a bit. So some of the research that we point to illustrate this is out of the University of Colorado, where Kenneth Wright's team took different students camping. And what they did was a lot of them different bedtimes. And many would say, oh, I'm a night owl. I can't fall asleep till past whatever late time. But then when they take them camping, they're only exposed to what you'd be exposed to when camping, bright days, dark nights. They'd measure melatonin, they would see the results, and these people would very quickly be beginning to align more with their falling asleep. Their sleep onset is faster and falling asleep in alignment with the rhythms of nature. So they're starting to no longer act like those chronotypes that they thought were so hardwired. Now they're more aligned with these rhythms. So this is a big, big deal, because if we are saying all those things we say, we eat at certain times, we fall asleep at certain times, we get stressed in the evenings, or whatever we say, it actually has us question how much of a difference or impact is our environment having on our physiology and our results. The other thing that's really important to me is the mental health state about it, because one of the things that we see too is that things like bipolar, so people dealing with bipolar, we know that have heightened sensitivities to things like these circadian dysregulation components. So we know that some people are more sensitive to the change in their environments than others. So that also could be something to look at, of those people like myself that would say, oh, I'm such a night owl when I used to do everything not to do for sleep. That actually could have been a sign that I am quite sensitive to my environment and need to be even more mindful of this conversation.
Yeah. It's like we are what we repeatedly do, right? So perhaps it's not as predetermined for us, these segments. And as you're talking, I'm thinking about the times that my dad's no longer around, but he would be like, oh, I'm such a night owl. And he said that so much in my childhood that I was like, there was sort of like oh, I'm going to be a night owl. I'm a night owl too. And then also it's like, if I go and I look back at my dad's behaviors, he'd be having like Milano chocolate cookies and a glass of milk and a big old TV screen and like watching shows. And that's, of course you're a night owl. You're jacking yourself with sugar. Right. You're spiking all of your hormones in the wrong direction. You're watching this big screen of light. And not that he knew, and no judgment, but just there are all these other structures of belief systems and upbringing and the environments that we are in that really shift that, like that can create that pattern and lay that ground.
And this has real world effects, and then I'll stop talking. But this really gets me amped up. There is a recent study that came out called The Mind After Midnight. And so this has real world implications, where this study found that diurnal pattern to thoughts, like I was kind of alluding to earlier. And this is a big deal, because what they found is that in whatever your wee hours in the morning are for your schedule, so mind after midnight, so going into 1, 2, 3 in the morning, what have you. Many of us, I'm sure, have had the moment when we wake up in the middle of the night or we couldn't fall asleep and we're thinking of the worst possible things, like catastrophic thinking. Oh my God, I'm going to go bankrupt. I'm going to do this. I'm going to whatever. And so all of those thoughts come up at those times. And there is we're discovering what could be real science to support the why that we're doing this kind of almost flawed logic or more anxiety prone thinking. And the real world effects are suicidality rates going up in those early morning hours. This flawed logic having a potential real negative impact on our lives. And it's something for us to start to have that reverence for or respect for. The other thing we see is with shift workers, and they're a great use case or group to look at, because we see that they often have more of those psychiatric issues at play. Mm-hmm. So it just touches on every aspect of life, and I think it warrants us examining it further.
Yeah. Cool.
I just wanted to circle back to the tech.
The tools. I want you to
bring it back. I know, exactly.
It's great. And it's like
bring it to suicide and all these things. Okay, we'll bring it back to
all. No less important.
Yes, totally.
So a couple of things. You were talking about these little disc things.
Yeah, you said you got from her, but I feel like Matt was like, Danny had these things. Like it's just done
I share them on my stories.
Yes, I know. Yes,
I share them on my stories more often. But they are these little disky things that, again, I found on Amazon.
Yes.
And they're motion red lights. You can keep them on, but they're phenomenal for travel. You just charge them USB charger. But I have 2 of them. One sits underneath my bed, sort of right at the foot of the bed. So then if I have to wake up in the middle of the night because my room is pitch black because of my U blackout shades, they should come packaged together, by the way.
Yes.
That's the conversation.
A duo, bundle.
It's like, hey,
a little bundle,
a little. So you have blue blockers and a little red.
Yeah,
totally.
Yeah, so I walk by and it lights up, and then I have one in the bathroom just in case, because again, we're not asking people to stumble around. We don't want anyone to get hurt. Like, just be thoughtful about lighting up your environment. I also have a couple of lights that are just red light. They're plug in. You could set them to auto, but they're brighter. And Mollie will talk about how the brightness of light also has an impact. So even though it's red, there's this one like plug-in light that's way too bright.
Is
like if it goes off, motion sensor, but you could turn it off. You could turn it static on. So I use that one more just to stay on as I'm brushing my teeth or washing my face in the nighttime. So, or taking a bath. It's a real nice vibe and it's very relaxing. But I turn that one off at night and just have my little disc that's very low light on the, just in case I have to use the bathroom or something. And then there's some apps for the phone, if you want to show your phone with the click. So you can set up your phone. You can just Google this, but you could set it up so you can triple click the side so the screen turns red. And so in the evening times, as the sun goes down, that's when you want to think about turning off all those overhead lights, switch on the orange, the candles, the red lights, the screens, put on blue blocking glasses. I like the orange ones so I can, again, see around my house.
Yeah.
Like, so if you throw on the red ones, it's
you're not
too
going to
dark.
stick with it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You're not going to stick with it. The orange ones, you hardly notice. And I will say, let's call out imperfections and how you don't have to be perfect about this.
Yes.
We're not expecting you to, again, live like the Amish or pioneers or whatever. I still sometimes watch TV at night. I still use my phone sometimes at night. But I have my blue blocking glasses on, right? So we're doing things to mitigate some of these things, and I sleep phenomenally well, and I feel like I'm really regulated. Like, so the idea is that, but then you can also set yourself up powerfully, like you're doing. Talk about your bookend technique.
Yes. Man, the bookend technique. So, a couple things on the point of the perfection piece. This is a huge aspect. So even if you just begin with one light bulb in your space, just start small.
Yes.
And then you can start to build upon this. It's just can make such a difference. So you begin there. But then to your point around how do these things affect how you're behaving? So you're still going to watch your shows. You're still going to go on your phone. You're going to do all these things. But could we provide a little bit of a pocket of peace, if you will, in your evenings? And particularly with our smartphones, we find that for a lot of people, it can just be this rabbit hole to augmenting the amount of time that you're awake, pushing back your bedtime. And if I'm saying for everyone to wake up at around the same time, and if you really mind that, if you don't affect or set up powerfully your evenings, then you're just going to keep shortening your sleep duration and not going to be getting enough sleep over and over again. So what we want to do is something I like to call the bookend technique. And so that is simply where you're just putting your phone away, kind of almost tucking it into bed, if you will, which sounds ridiculous, but this is where we're at as humans. So you're tucking
Are we
this
getting
phone.
Smarter or?
Well, yeah, a lot of questions
The
with
phones
this.
are.
Yeah. But the fact that this requires a, whole ceremony is, whatever. But so you tuck this thing away and you actually turn it off and you have that kind of moment where we're done here. So you're doing that ideally about an hour before bed, and you can find what works for you. But even for the average person, like 30 minutes before bed would be a huge win. But then you're bookending that at the end of the day. But then you're also, to Danny's point around the morning and not wanting to flood in a whole dopamine-like effect of looking and staring at this blue light in the morning, you can still then take that extra 30 minutes, an hour in the morning where you're also not tapping into that phone. So you're ensuring that your days are ending with this powerful ritual and your mornings are starting with that kind of peace as well. And you're not being flooded with those, kind of deleterious effects of the bright light.
Yeah. And it's I want to say it's challenging, right? And for some people it's hard. And for all of us, the remembering that it is the light that is doing the dirty work. It's the light that is like, but why do I feel the need? And when I go to Burning Man for a week, well, it'll be a long time at the burn. People will be like, she's dumpy. When I'm at Burning Man for a week, you just are on your phone so minimally. I have it with me to take photos, but other than that, I'm not on it. Mm-hmm. And it's like
revolutionary.
The first 24 to 36 hours, I will have those moments where I'm like, I'm going for my phone.
Yeah.
And it's like, there's no need. You don't have, like, you're in this beautiful other environment. And so that year for me, like that week for me is very, I think I'm just going to go to the burn right now and I'll see you guys
See you later.
for the next year.
Bye.
That, seriously. It was so lonely out there that year, waiting for those 70,000 friends to show up. But no, that moment that it's like, okay, I have no need to go for it. The people I care about and love are here. The other people who are at home, and I care about and love them too, they're at home. They know I'm away. It's all safe. And like 24, 30 hours in, it's game changing how you can, the other senses pay more attention, how my sleep works that week, although it's a very interesting week for sleep.
Yeah.
But also just the things you want to go and see and do and how your creativity shifts. And of course, there's lots of inspiration out there of art and music and like culturally cool things and, you know, naked people too. Yes, naked people too. But all this stuff that's going on, this cacophony of information that we can take in and think different thoughts about and be more creative. And like, I think that we more and more, and certainly this is like an end of one for me, but seeing it with some clients and seeing it with people and how they use their phone so much, we are stunting our vision, our creativity, all of those pieces of us in a way that's so profoundly negative. Yes, AI is going to come over and tell us all the things we have to do. And also, we are these people who are in creation until we are stuck in the rabbit hole that ends up really bringing about like shame. And, you know, it's all funny to put a meme out in the world about, oh, it's like 2 a.m. when I'm like, I'm going to get better sleep.
Yeah.
You're just still scrolling on your phone. But it's just, it's shape shifting when you put it down. And there's definite nights that I'm like, I pick my phone up because I can't sleep.
Yeah.
And I know better. And then I'm like, oh my God, an hour went by.
Totally.
In bed. And then there's nights that I like smartly, sweetly am saying to myself, you're fine and you can just rest. And it's either breathwork or I put on a nidra or something. But there's that differential that we're just, I would like to say societally, I don't think that we are telling ourselves, hey, you're cool. It's okay. You're connected. You're worthy of getting good sleep and like putting ourselves to bed. Like this putting ourselves to bed notion is a thing we do with children. And I think that there's something that dopamine is fighting against that all the time. It is a chemical response in the body, right? So how do we shift that so that we're, the dopamine detox, right? It's that vibe for sure.
Yeah. And I just wanted to quickly say that one of the things that I found, because one of my things this, you know, starting 2024, I'm like, I am not allowing myself to take my phone in bed.
Yeah.
Because I am always staying up too
and
late
no TVs in your bed.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, your
TVs
bedroom.
in your bedroom.
Sleeping and sex, people.
So I, you know, no phone in bed, but then I'm starting to put it away a little bit earlier. I'm inspired by Mollie's bookend technique. And so I realized I'm like, I don't have anything else to do.
Yeah.
So it's like I have to start, I had to start getting creative. Okay, real books. Or like a Kindle that doesn't have a bright screen and you get like a little red book light. They have them on Amazon.
Yeah.
And different things, journaling, baths, guided meditations, breathwork sessions, puzzles, games, massaging your partner. There's so many things. Like, get creative. I bought a little paint set. I felt like it was COVID again. Just like, But I realized it's I don't have enough light. So anyway, it's just thinking of things. We have a friend who does fiction after 5. So the idea that we don't want to be having, not like listening to self-help podcasts and solving work problems and stressing about taxes and all these things. Mollie will call that thought timing.
Yes.
And how important it is to be doing lighter things, these wind down our minds. And a lot of what I'm sure you could speak to this more as well. So just have something set up so you can put your phone down. Because I think that we are often just setting ourselves up for failure because we don't have anything else to do. And we're like, well, this is boring. So
100%. 2 things about that too for the resources piece. One app that has been amazing, has been changing my life, is called the 1 Sec app. And it actually forces you to take a little breather before going into whatever, things might be the rabbit hole for you. So for me, the Instagram, the whatever, and Gmail. Oh my gosh. So it will have you pause beforehand. And it's really, really powerful. It's made such a difference. It's literally cut my screen time well in half, if not more. So setting yourself up like that. Secondly, I would say kind of in alignment, but it's something a little new, still needs more research, but I am really loving it, seeing benefits for myself and clients, is called the Somni. And the Somni is transcranial electric stimulation, and you do that for 15 minutes before bed. It's another kind of wind down thing. Nice music comes on. So it's even another forcing function. So I have that as part of my evening kind of wind down stack. So I'll put that on, then I'll read from the Kindle. And the Kindle has been such a nice thing for me to bring back into my rotation more because I was starting to get away from that and just cutting it too close. So now by bringing that back, it's really improved some of my sleep stats and just overall well-being. So, this is dynamic. You're going to keep, just when you think you have everything handled, then things start slipping. So you want to keep looking, critically at what areas are you getting weak with, what areas are working. And so the Somni is really interesting because it's been shown, it was just published in Frontiers earlier this past year, has Dr. Matthew Walker on the Science Advisory Board at UC Berkeley. And it's Smarty Pants. And it's showing, at least so far, they had evidence that it was 4 times more effective than melatonin, 2 times more effective than CBTI, 1.5 times more effective than Ambien in both sleep onset, duration, and quality in certain parameters. So anyway, it needs more research, but
is it fancy tech? Is it like expensive? And there's a cost analysis to be done for people.
Yeah, so it's about $300. So transcranial electric stimulation is things that has been used for many, many years in different iterations and different ways of using this, but often for mental health components. So depression, anxiety, certain things, which absolutely can bleed into our sleep results. But beyond that, one of the things that's new and noteworthy about their product is that it appears to be using more of this AI component so that you come in and you're all amped up from having been out with friends or whatever, right? And so often I'll see that for people. It's like, well, I even got into bed at around the same time, but I was so because I was out and about that it took them longer to fall asleep. I think we probably have all had that moment. And yet what it will happen is it has a baseline established of your particular brain activity. And then if it's seeing that it's kind of deviating from that state, then applies a different set of this, kind of protocol for the transcranial electric stimulation that's utilizing. So
is it adapting over time? So
adapting over time,
course correcting, and it's like, oh, I see, there's a new baseline, and then it's continuing to work with that.
Apparently, this is, and again, it still needs more research,
but
still, it is at trysomni.com/sleep-and-skill. But really, what it's interesting because I got to tour their labs.
We'll put all these things in the show notes. I mean, this is the thing. We all get involved with brands, right? In such a way.
But I have no sponsorship. I want to say something real quick. I have no sponsorship with them. It's more of anything that for me that it's going to make the difference for people with moving the needle in what I deem to be one of the most important areas that you can influence, which I think is the foundation of your health and well-being, being sleep. I am interested. Now, I do see a lot of things that are sparkly and interesting, but don't move the needle. Yeah. So when I rarely see things that could have that, possibility, that's pretty exciting to me, especially to the point when groups like the DoD are becoming involved to find, because they're
DoD, Department of Defense.
Exactly. Yes. And when that's happening, because they have real situations where, you got to get this Navy SEAL to be able to sleep. And when they're in the middle of really intense moments, how can we do that? How can we support people? It's noteworthy to find what could some of those things be. And often it's really the things that we've been talking about, so the behavioral components as much as possible, but it's not always possible for people. So what can you do in those situations?
Yeah. Yeah. And all I was going to say is that I know, of course, we are all involved with different brands. And I think with you guys, this very much rings true, as well as I know the level of integrity you both live in and like the brands that work for us. So it reaches a point where it's like we've suggested our 50th red click light, or we're beautifully like I'm putting on my filter optics. I'm like, these things are so clear and so lightweight and so amazing for blue blockers. Like I'm like going to contact the company and say, how can we work together to do more great stuff? Because your brand is something that's standing out to me, right? And so it isn't. Sometimes it's relationship, partnership, sponsorship, whatever. And thank you, because we're getting free education out to people on podcasts this way.
Like when
it
my
costs a lot of money to do a podcast, so it's beautiful.
Yeah.
But the brands
like
are
when
great.
My neighbors put up LED blue and white Christmas lights right across the street, I was like, thank the Lord for my U blockouts, because blue and white lights.
Yes.
I was like, oh my gosh, the two colors that are the worst. And then all of ours were red. So
my God.
Red. But I was like, thank God I have these shades, because it was right into my bedroom. Yeah. I felt bad for my little cat who's outside who didn't get the benefit of that.
Oh my God.
New blackouts are going into my new windows. So I'm so stoked about that, just to be able to have the space where I can actually, because in hotels I've been doing things like clipping and this and that and the curtains and the hangers and the shit that's hanging everywhere.
I
and,
know.
like, covering and unplugging the fridge and everything, little bell and whistle.
When I was a little
Have a
kid,
dark
I
space
used to
is
put
beautiful.
a VHS tape like in front of my VCR to block the light.
Yes.
I had Lisa Frank stickers and I put them over the little light on my TV and drew Sharpie. I would like tape my shades closed. I was like, where were these things when I was little? Because I was always
so
super
true.
sensitive about the light.
Yes.
Always.
So crazy.
So,
I know. I'm
yeah.
so excited to be able to get the U block out. I'm also not only going to be having that in my space, but also in our spare room, which we have people come over, and we're in downtown Austin. So the amount of light that's flooding into the room is
It's
like,
such a beautiful
it's going to be
space,
so
though, but
cool.
it's so beautiful to open
Oh
the
my
window and
God.
have the city views and then close it and be like, bye. And people are going to go, oh my God, Mollie. I'm in Mollie's.
So
Be careful,
excited.
people won't leave.
Yes, exactly. Come on over.
Yeah. And then I of course, because I'm like, we're on video. Like, I brought some things in the tools area, I think that are interesting for me. I do a lot with supplements, like navigating them, not always taking all the time. I've scaled a bit down to probably like 40 things a day I take in the van, but normally it's a bit more. But and a lot of it is rotation or where I am, it's like whether it's season or area, or if I'm feeling a certain way, or if I'm like, oh, I haven't been getting to the gym as much, etc. And so there's a thing to navigate. But like, I always use the Bioptimizer's Sleep Breakthrough, not just because
Bioptimizers. Yes.
because it's blue raspberry, which is a nostalgic flavor for me. Not that it doesn't have like,
And
sugar
Danny
in that
has a
way.
connection with it too.
It smells like Dimetap,
Smells
Yep.
like Diamond.
which I used to
Like
love.
youth. It smells
When I
like
was a
youth.
child.
Smells like younger years when you could have a blue Italian ice and be like, screw it, this
Yeah.
is fine for me. And the other thing is like our dear friend Sarah, this is,
Oh, yeah.
I like, it's traveled everywhere now. It went to England with me. It went to, all through my pneumonia, but also was with me in Puerto Rico. This is like, this sort of doubles as when I don't have the red light disc that hadn't come in. It doubles as the thing that keeps my room, like at night, I turn off all the lights. And then I was staying at my friend Joe's place and I was like, lights off, Sarah on. Like, this is current Sarah. But it's like, Sarah is the thing that's the gut brain connection with red light. But that piece, I don't have that yet. But this is this beautiful, I'm so stoked for having that in my suitcase. It's like,
It's
just
so
with
great
me.
too.
And then
so
I
easy to
can- and
travel with.
especially when it was like cold in England, it has a tiny bit of like, it produces some heat
Yes.
with the red light.
Red.
And it's like, put it on my belly or put it on my chest. And it's really soothing to sort of settle in like I don't have the weighted blanket in the van when you can't travel with that. But I love anything that for me, these tools, it's like pick your poison, pick what's going to serve you, and it's not really your poison. It's sort of pick your longevity hack, pick your biohack. But there is something that I have created in my body that's very like Pavlov's dogs. If I'm not going to sleep without a few things, like, yes, the light is managed and we get that's super factual, but there's just things that build into, and I think this is what is cool about shifting these tactics or these tools or like starting to weave them in and bookend them into your life, is that you get the tool and you try it out and then it becomes part of this routine, and then you sort of, you've cultivated that routine. And then I like put the Apollo on my ankle every night and I will set it to sleep. And I'm telling you, like, I can't always tell you if the exact prescription, I haven't sat with David Rabin yet to talk about the Apollo and the science behind all of it. I know a little, but like, it just, apart from the fact that I look like I'm wearing a prison bracelet on my ankle, but it's just, I can't wear anything on my wrist that helps with sleep. This is why I own an Aura.
Too close. Yeah.
And the vibration and the way it makes me kind of settle in and feel. So it's like, I know when my red lights are on and this is happening that like, and I don't mean just I know cerebrally, my body knows, it's time to like get rest. Oh, it's time to unwind and put down the thoughts that are happening. And that's, I think, where these tools all come in little by little by little. If they're physically blocking out the light and we're setting ourselves up for success, it's like that noise of putting the shade up or down, right? It's like, oh, it's nighttime, right?
Yeah.
And it's the milliseconds of all of our nervous system taking in the sounds and the movement and the things that we're doing that's setting us up for sticking with something, right? Which is the thing that's hard to do for many people. It can be hard to stick with something, especially, I think you mentioned earlier, if you have like a partner or a person or your family and they're all like, okay, we need to check her into the local hospital because all this stuff is happening. And no, we haven't seen it yet. Like, you're the weird one. Yeah. So I want to touch on that a little for both of you guys. If there's like how you advise clients when it's like, oh, honey, you're just over managing that. You have to really wear that you're not a diabetic, or like, like navigating that, or just navigating the sleep piece, like, why do we have to do this? I just want to watch the game replay, you know?
Yeah.
Like, what's the advice that you have, or like, what's the unraveling there to sort of help support with love your partner and say, I want to collaborate in the way that we work together, but I want to also get what's best for my body.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So as far as sleep's concerned, a couple things. One, to your point, it can land as a lot if we really start bringing in all of these things.
Yeah.
And so it can take, one, some of that kind of education piece, but I think two, getting to feel the experience or feel the impact. One of the things that, if available, if people are open to it, all of us tracking in some way, shape, or form, I find often helps support people coming over to the dark side, literally in the nights, because once they start getting in the game of it and seeing, oh, I can influence my numbers, and then you can start kind of almost competing with each other or what have you. And even if it's kids, getting to experience that this is just something we do here, and, kind of leading by example and kind of sleep leadership, if you will. And so if they can feel that and see those results, I think that can be a great place to begin. Also, so much of this involves communication. There's a great book called Sharing the Covers, and it's all about this topic of what often for some people needs to be a sleep divorce, and now it's being rebranded as sleep alliance. But different ways in which you can, right, especially because there's many reasons why it might not make sense for us to all be sleeping in the same bed. Or that the other person, their behaviors might now be affecting our well-being because now they're not willing to be in this conversation. So sometimes the lines have to be drawn if they're really not okay with doing some of the things we're talking about and it's impacting your sleep results. Or they're just on different schedules, or they have CPAP and they're snoring or whatever. So then it might make sense to sleep separately, but at its core, having the conversation at play so that we're all on kind of the same team versus just like at the effect of this other person's, wants and whatever. But also this all takes education for all of us, like I was certainly not doing any of this stuff when I had my sleep breakdown. I had no idea that wasn't even on the table. So once we start educating about it, it starts to make a lot of common sense for people when they start to hear more and more about it and see what it could look like, when it's not even that big of a deal when we start bringing in the motion lights, the night light piece, the handling some of these components that really don't make that much of an impact on their regular lives. So I think some of those things are the places to begin, the communication aspect of it too.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
And then also like feed into that, pun intended, with food, because meal timing can really be, people can be really staunchly opposed to shifting their meal timing, or perhaps work or things like that. And like, I still have moments where I'm like, I think about both of you mostly. And I'm like, it's 10 p.m. I'm having the big bowl of popcorn. I'm fired. I'm fired by Danny and Mollie. Or whatever, the late night snack that happens. I'm not, listen, I never said I was a perfect biohacker.
Yeah.
But like that's the thing between couples and like
times.
the food and the shifting of the time. So like, is there, how best to navigate that? If someone's listening, like, I'm never going to talk my person into that.
Yeah.
I mean, first, I would say try to do as much yourself as you can, because I always like to have people lead by example. And it's like, oh, they're feeling so much better. They're sleeping so well. They have more energy. They're all these things. So if you are able to lead by doing it yourself, and then the other person might catch on. So, and then the other thing that was just really coming into my head was like this idea sort of from James Clear, Atomic Habits, that idea of making it just as easy as the other options. So instead of like, that's where if you have a lamp and it has 2 light bulbs and you're going to turn on the light because the sun is setting, it is no harder to turn on the red one than it is the white one. So this idea of making it just as easy, setting yourself up for success, where you're not asking anyone to bend over backwards or really change anything. It's just do something different in like white instead of red, orange instead of white, whatever it is. And then the idea that, your partner doesn't need to put on the blue blocker glasses, but the living room is going to be lit by candles and an orange light. And then they'll start noticing, oh, this actually is calming. Just like your in-laws that they were like, well, actually, this is pretty nice, and asking for the respect of if you need to turn on a light bulb, just let me know. And I'm just going to move myself in a different room. But, the stuff with the eating, it really depends on, I think it comes down to a lot of times having some honest conversations and leading with, this is really important to me. And this is something I am trying or I'm doing, and I have heard the science behind it, and I want to try it for myself. And it would really mean a lot to me if you got on board, or I can still give you your dinner at 7 p.m., but I'm going to eat at this time. I'm still going to sit down with you and we'll talk, and I'm just going to have a cup of herbal tea, or I'm going to just drink some water. And so the idea that you can keep staying in your lane and let other people do what they want, because we can't change anybody unless they're like your kids. You can't control your partners. And so it's this idea that hopefully your partner will be supportive of you, and hopefully you can communicate that in a really honest way, that it really means a lot to me to care about my health. And I've learned all this new evidence that this could be keeping my blood sugar elevated. Like, I see people who block blue light at night, and their fasting blood sugar is lowered in the morning. Like, this is science. This is not, out there. It's direct. Right, it's a direct link.
Evidence.
There's so much evidence, and there's so much improvement with all these things, and how our hormones shift over time, and our sleep, our blood sugar, and our hormones are hugely impacted by this. And the risk of the risk mitigation of all these diseases as well. And so it just feels like something that you can bridge a conversation with your loved one. And if they're unwilling and, unable to, then maybe is that pattern showing up other places? Like, do we also have to have other hard conversations?
Yeah, so true.
But hopefully you're in a relationship with a person and other family members that will be understanding, and you'll do your best that you can and have your own blue blocker glasses on and protect yourself. That's what boundaries are, to protect you. And so, are your blue blockers are your physical boundary, protecting your eyes from the lights, And so, yeah, I just think that sometimes a lot of this health stuff, there need to be some hard conversations. And I have a lot of people who are in my life at certain points who are very not open to a lot of things I was doing. Like, I had an ex throw bread at me when I went paleo and told me I was in a cult. I had a very close family member also when I went paleo or keto, I can't remember, when I was doing those dietary protocols, that they were very upset and said, we can't get ice cream anymore, so we have nothing in common anymore. So just keep in mind that what you're doing, it brings up stuff for other people. It's like you're holding...
That's not even your stuff.
It's not your stuff.
That's not your stuff.
So right. This is also a piece to keep in mind, that this isn't your stuff. You're just going to trigger something in them. And maybe it's anxiety, like, oh my God, I've been doing this my whole life. What's going to happen to me? And that's not what we want to lead with. We're not trying to make anyone anxious about it. We're saying that here's new information. Oh, cool. Let me control what I can. Because I'm going to be driving sometimes. I'm going to be invited to a late dinner. I'm going to be out sometimes. Do we wear blue blockers in public? Yes, we do. Yeah. She sent me a picture the other day, and I was at an event, and I'm like, she zoomed into the crowd. Where's Waldo? It's like, find me, the only one wearing orange glasses. I'm like, I don't care. I don't want the bright lights in my eyes. And I'll look like the nerd, and it's fine. It's on brand,
It's on brand. And other people who are the nerd out there, if there's one other person in the crowd,
it's
instant
my
friends.
people.
It's a new friends.
Totally. Yeah. And on the flip side, too, because then there's also the possibility. I've seen one of the things we do in our cohort programs is we'll often have spouses can, participate for free. Because it also helps set me up to get better results for the person, because because you bring up a huge point. If we don't feel like we have buy-in from our family members and people in our environment, it can make it much harder to get those results that we're looking to get. So when those spouses come in and then participate, it's actually, I've been able to see some amazing kind of partnership, and they have fun together, and they're like figuring out how to make sure they get the dinner in earlier. So it can go both ways. And one thing just with my husband, he always makes fun of me with the Darth Vader thing. But over time, he's totally gotten on board. We often are ending our dinners now at 2, 3 p.m. And it's like his favorite thing to do. And so, the best moment was when he just traveled recently and he finally brought those same disc red lights that we've been talking about. He brought them along with him. I don't know if I told you this, which was such a great moment for me. It was like, yay, finally, so he's like, it becomes just the new norm. So it is possible. It might take a little bit of time, some of those hard conversations, but I think it can be so impactful. And then the whole house is sleeping and feeling and eating and all the things better, you know?
Everything. Everyone's like, there's like more time in the bedroom and more time of all of it. It's super great.
100%.
I love having all of us in a space to talk about these things and really dive into it. And hopefully for all the listeners, we'll tag all the tools and all the tricks and all the things we put in here, including the beautiful work that we're all doing in the landscape, just with the programs. But I just want to, thank you. And I'd love to just we'll start with Danny, just to do a little bit of a touch point to where people can find you, because they're going to wanna.
Sure. I hang out a lot on Instagram. Danielle Hamilton Health is my handle. It's also my website. And I have a program, Blood Sugar Mastery. I'm incorporating all these circadian principles into my work because our sleep has such a huge impact on our blood sugar, and of course vice versa. And so, but it also sets us up for better blood sugar regulation, insulin sensitivity. And then my podcast is Unlock the Sugar Shackles.
I love that.
Amazing.
And I have a new YouTube channel, which I'm really proud of.
Yeah.
I like that.
Beautiful.
Also, Danielle Hamilton Health. So
Cool.
yeah.
So good. Well, all my things are at sleepisaskill.com, and there you can do a few things. So if you are dealing with anything with your sleep, we have a couple things that you can do in a sleep assessment, get auto-triggered back information right away that you can, lots of resources and things that you can do to shift that. We have a weekly newsletter, goes out every Monday. For over 5 years, we've been doing that.
Every Monday for over 5 years. It's one of the only ones that I read.
Thank you. I love you. I love that thing. It has just been such a cool way to interact with people. So people, will respond and share what's going on for them with their sleep. And I read every single email, get back to you on those. So I'd love to have more and more people talking about sleep. Then we have a weekly podcast as well, the Sleep is a Skill podcast. We also have cohorts, and all of these are using different sleep trackers. We have sleep wearable audits that we now do too, so we can audit your sleep information and kind of help support you right away. And different ways to ensure that if you're struggling with your sleep, we can definitely get you information free or dive into something else to get more committed. Whatever you need, it's there is the intention.
Yeah. Amazing. And then everything I have is wellpower.life and connects to Sherpa Breath and Cold, which is a very big piece of my heart right now around the breathwork and cold exposure landscape. And you can find me there on my podcast, Wellpower. I love that we get to continue to share lots of free resources and education, and then program with people who really need it. So stoked that we could be there together. Thank you so much for listening. I love you. We're powerhousing in Austin right now. I'm so stoked about it.
Love us.
All right, we'll see you on the other side. We'll see you in the morning.
Exactly. Well slept.
Bye.
Thank you.